What's up guys, Mike here, welcome back to Game Dev with AI, our place, experiment, our journey where we are developing our indie real-time strategy game with the help of tools of AI without any programming skills whatsoever, with the tools of visual programming in the engine called Construct 3. If you're following my journey, we've been doing amazing progress so far and we are ready to prepare the first version of our game for the Steam. And in case if you are watching the game later, make sure to check out our game called Nuke Them All on Steam, and hopefully you can wishlist it. And in case it's already released, maybe or just maybe you'll buy just one copy for yourself, or maybe you'll tell a friend. I'll be super grateful for all your support. In this video we are gonna cover the topic that nobody likes to cover. It's fixing the bugs and optimizing your game to have the best performance you can have. So let's get straight to it. Whew. So speaking of the bugs in the game, if you're developing the game as your passion, as a side project on the weekends, if it's not your full-time job and you don't have dozens or hundreds of people working with you, it's really hard to keep on focus, to stay motivated, to keep on going, because as soon as you encounter the bugs, and you will, and everybody does, you'll be really demotivated. This will really drag you down, and if you encounter the bugs that are really hard to stop, you'll lose all your motivation. There are a lot of things that are so tedious, that are so time consuming, that you just say, okay, forget about it, I just go play the other game. I don't want to do it at all. So I hope this video will give you some ideas and how I was able to overcome these frustrations and resolve different bugs in the game, and also how we can optimize it to perform better. To make things easier, you can separate bugs in different levels based on the importance or priority. For example, there are minor issues that improve the quality of your game. And just to be more clear, I'll give you specific examples. For example, we have this robot called LaserBot in our game. If I open this little guy, he has a lot of animations. One of them is shooting. So to make him shooting, I need just to choose the origin point where the bullet will come from. For example, right here in the weapon. But the problem is he has, look at this, he has 133 frames, which is about 4 seconds of animation. And during that animation he moves a lot. If I play this animation, he is doing all the things. You see where I'm going to? You have to manually click every single frame from starting to finish. And for each hand, you have to click and select the origin point for every single frame, and then for left hand the same. So you can see how tedious this work is. And this is just one robot, one animation. And if you have several robots, you have to do it all over again for another robot. And these things can really drag you down if you're just starting out with a game. I mean, you have to choose at some point, do you want to make it perfect, like shoot every bullet come from his weapon, or if he's quite small, maybe you can simplify, you can cheat a little bit and make the bullet come, let's say, from somewhere right here in the middle. So if the bullet is flying fast, nobody will ever care or notice. So you have to find the solution and the balance between making things perfect and making things good enough. That's very important if you're developing the game yourself. Another sort of bugs is something that you can fix yourself. You don't need anybody's help. It just takes some time. And for example, I'll give you a specific example. When my robot is dying, for example, he's dead. Enemy tank killed him. He needs to play the animation of death, which looks like this. So this is how the animation of death is looking. As he's falling down, and it takes about 2 seconds. But the problem here is, until he is fully dead, he's still alive for the enemies. So until he is destroyed from the game, he's considered as an enemy for the opposite team. So they will keep shooting to the dead body, which doesn't make any sense when you play it, because if somebody is dead, why you keep on shooting? This doesn't make sense. So how can we solve this issue? We can either set the enemies to ignore something among our units which is playing animation dead, like we invert it, or we can destroy our robot right away, but then we create a different object which just plays animation of death, which is not part of our team. So this way, this new object will be looking like our robot is dying, but from the coding part, for the enemy team, it looks like a neutral object, so they will stop shooting at it. There are also a lot of bugs that are really hard to solve and really annoying, and that require you a lot of logic. I'll give you another example. For example, if our units are taking enemy fort, then I want all the units from the blue team to come and help. I don't want them to just wander around and ignore when your base is about to get blown up, right? So how can we do it? For example, I select my enemy fort and I add line of sight, and in case of line of sight has red team, then everybody in the distance of proximity of the port should come and help it, right? Sounds logical. Will it work? No, it doesn't. Why? Because line of sight is a continuous action. So it will keep triggering and triggering and triggering for them to come, so they will be paralyzed by every tick getting the same order to come. They will never move. So you need to think like this from the coding from the coding point of view. You have to trigger it once, and then you need to set so it's not triggered until end of this action. So a lot of things like this take a lot of trial and error, and they are not as easy as you might expect. So for next level of the bugs, if you are not able to solve the logic yourself, you can go for the help of ChatGPT, and you can see an example. I'm asking him to help me turn the particle system to 70 degrees, but it's not turning. And then ChatGPT gives you a long solution, and you try to implement it, and you realize there is no such section as motion and particle systems. I mean, come on, man, this happens every single time. It keeps on creating non-existing functions and features. And you say, oh no, this will not work. And then ChatGPT says, I apologize for confusion, here's another solution for you. And then you try it again and again and again, and hopefully you will fix this bug. So majority of the bugs you will fix this way. And let's be clear, guys, when you develop the game, 80% of the time you'll spend on fixing the bugs, and only, I would say, 20% at best you'll spend on adding new features to the game. So you have to get ready for this tedious bug fixing process. But sooner or later you'll encounter the bugs that even ChatGPT cannot help you. AI is not perfect at this stage. So you have to go good old school way. And for this reason you can hire professional developers on Fiverr. There are a lot of great programmers and game developers on Fiverr who are more than happy to help you for a small compensation to look at your code and fix your bugs and give you tips, advice, whatsoever. If you don't trust anybody, then you can ask them to sign non-disclosure agreement so they don't spread your code around. But most of these guys are just trying to help and make some money doing it. So this is a win-win situation. So don't be embarrassed to ask somebody for help when you cannot solve the issue. Instead of just wasting weeks and weeks or even not making game at all, just admit that you don't know everything and it's alright. Just go and ask for help, pay a small fee, and let the professional developers help you. That's my best advice so far. You can structure the work with other developers in tools like called Trello. Trello lets you, for example, list the bugs, and then other developers will look into the bugs. They can make some comments on the bugs. Then if it's solved, you can move it to the solved area, and this helps to keep everything optimized and organized. And if you want to go even more professional, you can set up collaborate on construct using the GitHub. There is a good article which takes you step by step, but this is a lot of process setting everything up. It's a long tutorial, so you can do it if you're really going to be working with a big team on Construct 3, and this is possible. Each of them will be able to commit changes to the GitHub project, and then it will be distributed on the same file, so everybody will have the latest version of the same file, and you don't need to send the file all the time or every time. But to summarize this part, I just wanted to say that your game, if you're an indie developer, especially with low experience, this will never be a perfect game. There will be always little issues here and there. There is some animations will not work, some bullets will not fly. You have to find the balance in this, otherwise you'll never release the game trying to look for perfection that never comes. So the point is, don't try to be perfect, just be good enough. Make a game that is playable, that is enjoyable, and if it has some little bugs, little issues here and there, people will forgive you, especially if it's an indie game and if it's not an expensive project, if it's developed by one person. That's totally okay. So don't try to be perfect, don't spend 5 years trying to iron out every issue. Just be good enough. That's all I have to say for you. The next part of this video I wanted to cover about optimizing your game to make sure it runs smooth and fast on different computers for your clients and your players. It's very important to get the game optimized. If your game is like mine with a lot of explosions, sprites, everything is going on, you will lose your frame rate and you'll waste a lot of memory very quickly if you're not optimizing everything. There is a great article in Construct 3 website called Memory Usage. It explains to you the theory behind how it handles the memory. So I will not waste all your time reading this for you, but make sure you find this article and you study it. It's explained how the sprites and everything is handled in the Construct 3, so you don't waste your memory, and how layouts are loading, how the image memory is calculated, how you shouldn't misuse the downscaling quality, and how the audio, sounds and music is handled. In short, when the layout is started, all the objects that you have here on the map are already preloaded in the memory. This helps a lot because when you're operating with them, Construct 3 will display them without any delay whatsoever. It's very quick and it's very smooth. If you don't put your objects on the map when you start the layout, then those objects will be called when you call them, which forces Construct 3 to load the objects that is not in the memory, and this might take few seconds or milliseconds, and it creates jitter and it creates a delay which looks terrible. Sometimes your animations are not loading, sometimes your sprite appear invisible or your bullets not appearing, which is terrible way. That's why you're supposed to put the objects that you use during the game in the layout. So I'll give you an example in the Desert Storm map. This is all you see in the layout in the game, but if I zoom out, outside of layout, all those objects that you don't see, but they are needed, like cursors and all the slides, explosions, they're all here. So this way they are loaded into the memory, and once we run the game, they're already there for you. and they can be called pretty quickly. So what we can do to optimize the game? First of all, the size of the sprites matter a lot. If I have our robot factory this size in the game, but my sprite is much bigger, and if I click make one-to-one, on each of them, if I click one-to-one, they become bigger, which means I'm wasting a lot of memory. I don't need them to be so big. And for example, this robot is like this in the game. But if I click make one-to-one on them, you see, he becomes big as this. So I don't need it to be so big. And this area, which looks like empty space, it's also using the memory as well. So how you can optimize it? First of all, you can rescale it, resize to the size that you need, one by one, so you don't need to scale it up or down. Then you can remove the crop transparent edges, something like this, so there is no extra wasted space. And now, I guess you wondered why I didn't do it yet, because for a simple reason, I don't know the right scale yet, because when I'm early stage of the game development, I don't know exactly if robots should be like this or like this or like that. So I don't want to scale him down and then realize later that he's too small, and then it's too late. I cannot upscale properly. The quality will reduce. So for now, I'm wasting a lot of memory by keeping sprites so big, but I keep this in mind. So when time comes, I'll be optimizing and downscaling all the sprites. What else we can do to optimize memory? There are a lot of times that we have a lot of particles, explosions, like a decal of the hole, of explosion, fireworks, dust, fire, and it's not visible on the screen. So the rule of thumb is, if something is not visible on the screen, you don't need it. We can easily destroy it. So every second we check in. If something is not on screen, we simply destroy all those objects. Another idea you can do is every once in a while you can unload unused images from memory. But be careful with this idea, because it can ruin your gameplay. If you really unload too much of important things, like for example bullets or animations, then once you call them again, they'll be appearing with a delay, which can ruin your gameplay. So be very careful with this automatic feature called unload unused images from the memory. Now we discussed that we can remove things off screen, but also on screen. If we have a big battle with a lot of tanks fighting with each other, we really don't need to see every single detail. For example, trucks that are remained from the tanks on the sand. If you have a lot of tanks, we don't care if we see every single track. So if it's too many on the screen, we just delete them. The same with fire, explosions, or dust. If we are in the middle of the big battle of the tanks, we really don't care if every single explosion is causing dust effect, for example. You see where I'm going. So when the player is overwhelmed with a lot of things going on the screen, it's totally okay to reduce amount of them. So you can easily kill some of the explosions, some of the fires, some of the smokes, and nobody really cares, nobody will notice, and this will save you a lot of memory. And finally, you can double check everything by running the game in so-called debug layout mode. It will load your game in a small screen over here, and below you will see all the details. You'll see the frame rate. Ideally it should be at least 120. It should never go less than 60, because on the weak computers you don't want people to experience low frame rate. And also estimated memory. It should ideally be under 4 GB, especially for the low-end computers. I know the most professional games require 16, 32 GB of memory, but we don't want to abuse and ask your indie game players to have super modern computers, right? So let's keep it low for them. You can also check how much activity each operation is going. You can destroy some objects and see how it will influence your frame rates. Another thing you can reduce is the amount of shadows. For example, if something is off screen, you really don't need to display extra objects such as shadows or explosions. Everything that is visual but doesn't change the outcome of the battle, you can easily destroy. So this is pretty much it for now. Thank you for watching, and I would be more than grateful if you know more ways to optimize your game, especially in Construct 3 engine. Please share them in the comments below. If we can improve our frame rate, if we can reduce the amount of memory we use, it will be win-win for everybody. And if you're watching this later, if our game is already on Steam, so don't hesitate, check out Nuke Them All game on Steam wishlist, or maybe, just maybe, get a copy for yourself, for your friend, for your family. Just buy all of them. I'll be more than happy. That's all for today. Bye for now. Take care. Cheers.